We're on to the fourth in the series on Where's My Miracle? And this group of miracle-needing people is the paralyzed. It's another miracle we see repeated in the Bible, those that are paralyzed being healed. And one such story is found in Matthew 9. Some friends brought a paralyzed man on a mat to Jesus, and Jesus' first words he speaks to the man is that his sins are forgiven. And it says Jesus spoke those words in response to the faith of the friends that were carrying the man on the mat. What? We don't read that the man or his friends repented or even asked for forgiveness of sins, but rather their mission was to bring their lame friend and see him walk again. Of course, there were naysayers in the crowd standing nearby thinking that Jesus was blaspheming, and then Jesus responded to their thoughts. He told them their thoughts were evil, and he stated an amazing fact about himself. It's just as easy for Jesus to forgive sins as it is to heal a person. And then he tells the paralyzed man to take up his mat and go home. Two instances of Jesus reading the thoughts of those near him. Apparently the friends and the man himself were thinking that maybe sin or wrongdoing had caused him to be paralyzed. So Jesus attended to that need first, the one for forgiveness. And when that was scoffed at, Jesus attended to the pride in those standing around him finding fault, reminding them of who he was, the one we all need to be healed inside and out. This story of the paralyzed man is told in the first three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And in Luke, we read how the friends had to cut a hole in a roof to let down the man in front of Jesus because of the crowds. And in Luke's story, it ends with saying that many said they saw remarkable things after Jesus healed this paralyzed man. But John's story is a little bit different. There's a paralyzed man in his story that was laying by the water and unable to get in. He'd been there 38 years, and Jesus asked him if he wanted to be well. The man said he'd tried multiple times to get in this water that healed, but everyone else got in there before he did. Jesus gave him the same instructions he did to the other paralyzed man and said, take up your mat and go home. And later when Jesus saw the same man, he said, don't sin anymore or something worse might happen. So this miracle of healing the paralyzed began with healing their hearts. And that's the way some miracles come. And it's so cool that Jesus knows this even if we don't speak a word. We think we need to walk, but he knows we need forgiveness first. Being paralyzed is being incapable of moving on our own. We have to have assistance. And I'd say again, we've all been paralyzed in this life. The worst might seem like being paralyzed physically, laying on a mat, unable to move unless someone carries you. We had some friends years ago that brought their son to church week after week in a wheelchair, and he lay there unable to move any part of his body except to flicker his eyes. It was hard to look at him, and it was harder to understand why this young man had been left on this earth in this condition for years, paralyzed. But while most of us don't have that condition, we do encounter things that paralyze us in lots of ways. Our faith is paralyzed in disaster. We're paralyzed in relationships and stuck, unable to love again. We might be paralyzed in confidence when we fail. Any number of life experiences can paralyze the most agile of us in life. But then there are inner things and sins and wrong actions that paralyze us. Some kids and adults too might physically disobey laws and end up paralyzed. Others might curse God or turn away or feel as though we've done the unthinkable in life and there's no use in even speaking up because we're ashamed. And yet Jesus knows the miracle we need, and he has the authority to forgive, reinstate, give us movement again, and even enable us to carry the mat on which we were lying or laying. Sometimes our friends are the ones that carry us to Jesus in prayer when we ourselves cannot walk. One thing we can find comfort in when praying for a miracle of any kind is that Jesus has the authority, the power, and the all-knowing ability to target the healing and heal in the right order. Sometimes there's sin that needs to be dealt with, and he knows that. What good would it do to heal a person and have them go right back into a life of destruction? I personally have been stifled or paralyzed in specific areas of my own heart from hurts and wounds. We all have. And I had a period of about a year where I had an actual stiff, frozen shoulder and I was unable to move my arm above my waist. It was painful, and I was fearful that it could be stuck that way. But my story is that God told me to start worshiping Him and raising my hands as far as I could, and over a period of months, I was completely healed. That's not your story, and your story is not my story. But the storyteller is Jesus, and He knows. He knows to speak to our thoughts when we're on the mat ourselves or when we're carrying a paralyzed friend to Jesus, and He knows the order of things, when to address what, when to heal, and He has instructions to follow. It's not mean or judgmental or harsh for Jesus to heal us in His time. It's paramount and effective and life-lasting when He speaks to our deepest thoughts before He heals our outward pain. I suppose one might say there's nothing worse than suffering a paralyzing blow in life physically. It's horrific. But paralyzing sin is just as bad and results in a life without knowing the love of Jesus. Waiting for a miracle in areas where you or yours are paralyzed? Pray. Ask others to carry you to Jesus in their prayers. Listen for His voice and obey, and let Him do the work in His best way, because He will.